that there is a spiritual strategy behind the events that we do that addresses serious issues. Most often, or a lot of times, leaders tend to attack evil. And so the devil gets so much publicity by us talking about all the stories of how bad things are. Even as I been a part of leading a significant prayer movement, you gather people together, including leaders. We spend so much time complaining to God or explaining to Him the problem, and He says, would you just get down to giving some orders? God does nothing. Ian Bounds said this, author of many books on prayer. God does nothing but an answer to prayer. That being true. I didn't say if that's true. That is true. We are His spiritual deputies. We are partners God's designed in relationship. And He's not going to do it till we actually speak it. We speak life or death, we know the Scriptures talk about. And we spend more time focusing on the death results with the bad news in our news and everything else. And in Christianity, the same thing. We complain about these issues instead of taking steps to overcome evil with good, along with actually speaking life into what we're doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't, is because we hobby horse issues that the devil has got us preoccupied with seeing all the problems. We carry the solution in Jesus Christ, and we are to incarnate Him on this earth, and His Spirit moving in and through us. And when we start functioning and praying and living life in relationship together, being concerned for one another, that changes the spiritual climate to where things can happen. And then actual tangible ministries that are either existent for us or would come into birth came out of the unity. And so like ministries, I think I was making reference to the Redwood Gospel Mission. I mean, they've been around for years. But all of a sudden now when we, or the Pregnancy Counseling Center, most of us as local churches, we're not giving much of time and attention or finances or support to these ministries that are viable ministries. The gospel mission is about the poor and that need help, not just in feeding them, but they need the gospel. They need programs to help them through their different forms of addictions, and they need to be mentored. And so as a result, little happens. So everybody's struggling. Most little churches are struggling, and most churches are little. Why are they little? Because we're selfish, and we're insecure, and we're indifferent, and we're prideful, and we want to be the lead pastor. It's like, as pastors, we're to shepherd the sheep. We're to comfort them and love them, but release them to multiply. And so I think what we began to realize is, as we were doing that, and we were not in competition, but we were complementing one another. And so it moved us into doing foreign missions together. We got together and pooled, where does everybody have missionaries that they support in the world? And so everybody's scattered doing their own thing. And we said, let's take this list. So we did a brainstorming thing. We wrote down where everybody has missionaries in their different denominations. And so, okay, all of you that are focused on Asia, get over in this group. All you in Europe. And we divided it up and said, now you guys begin to talk. What do you already have going on? And if you're doing mission trips, whether it's short term, I said, one of the problems in missions, in my opinion, is that we do these mission trips and we end up feeling good about ourselves, but we go for a week and a half or 2 weeks. What kind of impact can we really have? Yeah, they're going to, wherever we're going, they're going to receive what we bring. They're excited. But I felt that we need to have an ongoing presence in a given region. Well, to do that, one church cannot send its people 2 or more times a year to a given location. You run out of people, and you can't consistently build a relationship with that mission. So why don't we find out the common areas that we already have, and then maybe don't do what you've been doing and join this other church that's in the general area, and then together you're going with more money, you're going with more personnel that for your drama teams or your singing teams or whatever they are, and then we plan out over the year where you're going more than once a year. But it doesn't have to be all of your people. Maybe you send a representative from your church to join this group, and all of a sudden the impact we were having in parts of the world and relationships that were being built, missions was becoming more effective. And what we would contribute in time and monies multiplied. And it was what we already had in our relationships. But it was just sitting there dormant because leadership was not coordinating what we could do together. And that doesn't mean that we all can do everything together. But if we're trying to protect those distinctives that we're trying to protect in our theological things, we have to kind of step back and go, we want to exalt Jesus Christ and allow His Spirit to move and flow. And if you're not comfortable with a certain expression, then just by you being present doesn't mean you condone or whatever your issue is. It's just a matter of allowing the body life, that agreeing, that symphony, that orchestra, which carries harmony. So I've got to listen to someone else and harmonize, and that sound draws people to you, and then you become more effective. So I don't think we're very good stewards, by and large, if we're not in unity within our own local churches. Because what we're talking about is not just unity in a city or in a community. We're not even unified in our local churches. And we all have a different component. And so using tools to kind of articulate what everybody can agree on. I don't know if anybody's going to disagree with that Ephesians 4:16 passage I read. It says, under God's direction, the whole body is fitted together perfectly, as each part does its own special work, helping each other grow and be healthy, and that we're full of love. That love compels the community, and it draws us together.
And it becomes then less about guarding our territory.
That's right.
And more inclusive, bringing people actually to Christ. One pastor friend of mine talked about a group of pastors in his area doing a vacation Bible school together. Well, one of the immediate questions from one of the other guys is, well, if we do that and somebody comes to Christ, then whose church are they going to go to? And my friend is like, who cares?
That's right.
As long as they're in the body of Christ, that's the big issue.
Yeah.
We have this tendency to want to guard our own area so much that we're, I think, in some sense, excluding others.
Well, and in the spiritual realm, if we're talking about that gives the enemy ground to work, is that if we're so concerned about ourselves and we're not about that individual who came to Christ and what their family dynamic is and what their needs are, if we're aware of what the other churches are doing, we may go, and just like you had shared, the pastor in your area, is that, hey, I think it would best serve your family to go to this church, which perhaps is maybe closer than another church. And so we grew to be able to, when we would get cards if there were decisions made, and we would have events where we're having hundreds of people come to Jesus, documented, and where they live and all this stuff. Then we would go through them as leaders afterwards, going, well, where's it best fit for the people? And those who gathered the information, they're gathering information that gives us a little bit better idea of where they would best fit. That attitude is spiritual warfare, in the sense that it shuts down the competition and the indifferent and all those things, allowing the Holy Spirit of God to move. There's enough people in any given community to fill all of our churches. So if we're trying to convince everybody to fit within our mold, that's not necessarily a strategic or very healthy attitude. And I think the biggest problems of unity is leaders. And I'm a leader. That's it. The people love it. Matter of fact, I was asked, because of our involvement in lots of things, in loving and caring for the community, I was asked to be on a council of the leaders of the city, that all the leaders of all the departments within the city met once a month. And they asked me to be a part of that monthly meeting to represent the community of faith. Now, I use that term, community of faith, because that's what they think. Well, our faith is in Jesus Christ. I didn't have to. So I'm monthly now having a voice into to the running of the city that I never had before. And that's because we repented as leaders. months or years earlier saying, God, none of us have influence in civil governments. We complain about the decisions that they make and are frustrated with it, but we don't have an influence. Show us, what do we do? And he says, serve them, love them. And so I've illustrated some things that we do. And that opens the door. So then they invite me. Why? It's because of our good works and our loving one another. So now I have a voice, and I remember some of the heads of the various departments in the city saying, you know what y'all are doing is the way it should be. And then they would say, we want to know more about the Jesus that we've seen lived out than you trying to tell us we need to know Jesus. Because human nature backs up, don't tell me what to do or what I need.
It's like when somebody hands you a book and says you need to read this.
Yeah, exactly. Sure enough, and that usually it's the wife with the husband. It sits on the desk, and she's frustrated. And so,
or a parishioner to the pastor.
Exactly. So I think that if we start changing our mindset, it's a paradigm shift. Unity is a paradigm shift than what we have typically, well-intendedly so, been in, and it's not been very effective. So what we have found within our local ministries, they have all grown. We also have seen within our foreign missions has grown, and we've been able to sustain a constant presence in various places, and we have to give up some things. I mean, words like submit, surrender, sacrifice are all biblical terms that we don't glamorize those things. But to humble ourselves to pray, you have to surrender. It's not my will, but the Lord's will, or what's the best for that individual who came to Christ at the event. And if you're arguing over what churches they're to go to, no, let them choose.